I'm James M. Pfundstein. I'm a lecturer here at BGSU, and as a lecturer I teach Latin and myth and stuff like that. But on the side I have a sideline as a fantasy writer. I've written 3 books under the pen name James Enge, and my 4th one, the beginning of a new trilogy, comes out in late summer of this year. I write fantasy because realistic fiction doesn't seem to me to be weird enough to express what real life is actually like. You have to be reasonable. Things have to fit people's expectations or it's not realistic. But real life doesn't have to fit people's expectations. So in a way, fantasy is more realistic than realism. I always knew that I would write under an alias because my legal name, it is a burden I am proud to bear, James M. Pfundstein. It's just too hard for Americans to spell or pronounce. I wasn't embarrassed by writing sword and sorcery fiction with wizards and dragons and all that stuff, but I thought that my colleagues, my academic colleagues, they might be. So one of the smaller motivations for using a pseudonym was to save them from embarrassment so they would have deniability, which was totally unnecessary. As soon as they found out, they were all excited, and now my weird sword and sorcery books are on the shelves in the faculty publications cabinet, along with much more serious work. I think that my writing and my lectures are intertwined, partly because the fantasy and the languages and literature interests that I have come from the same impulse. Creating this universe and operating it, that's my hobby. A lot of writing doesn't actually happen in front of a computer or a keyboard. You have to think and dream in advance what's going to happen, and that you can do almost anywhere. Some people outline in great detail before they write, some people don't. I fall in the middle. I have a Word document usually of ideas and nifty lines of dialogue and names and things I want to include in the next chapter, and I just keep that open while I'm writing, and when I'm at a loss, which is not unusual, I go back to that document and see if I can mine it for ideas. I've always got something going, and I continue to do some academic publishing. I'm presenting next month at the Popular Culture Association, and I have some work on Roman tragedy. My new book is the first book in a trilogy. I've always held that the first 3 books weren't a trilogy. It was just a series that happened to be 3 books long, which is different. Because there's this thing that happens in fantasy trilogies where, stuff happens in the first book and then the second book is kind of treading water, and then towards the end of the 3rd book stuff starts to happen again, and I hate that. And I've always complained about it. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to write a trilogy. You can't do it right. There's no way to write a good trilogy. And then I thought, yeah, but what if there were? Each individual one will have a plot, but there'll be an overarching plot which goes through all of them. I'm not sure why it's fantasy more than anything else. I read lots of stuff, but somehow I guess I come back to the idea that life is weird, and even when nothing seems to be going on, there are all these weird thoughts that are in everybody's head, and fantasy can express those in a way that I couldn't say with a murder mystery or a realistic novel. So I think that might be it, but then I might have to see an analyst to find the answer, but then the analyst might cure me, and I wouldn't be able to do it anymore, so maybe it's best to not know.